Welcome to this training on electronic informed consent or e-consent. Today we'll explore how to properly implement and manage electronic consent in research studies while maintaining compliance with all necessary regulations. Let's start with the basics. Electronic informed consent is a modern approach to obtaining informed consent using computer based forms instead of traditional paper documentation. But remember, while the medium changes, the fundamental process and requirements remain the same. The key elements required by HHS regulations must still be present in any e consent system. This includes easy navigation through the document, the ability to move forward and backward, options to modify responses before submission, and the flexibility to pause and resume the process later. When it comes to signing an e consent form, subjects have two options. They can type their name and the date, or use a signature field with a stylus, mouse, or their finger. It's important to note that all e consent implementations must be approved by the IRB before use, and approval depends on the specific type of study being conducted. Before implementing e-consent in your study, there are several crucial factors to consider. First, think about your study population. Are they comfortable with technology? Do they have physical impairments that might affect their ability to use electronic devices? Second, always have a backup plan. Technical difficulties can occur, so keep paper based consent forms ready as an alternative. Finally, and most importantly, subjects must always have the choice between paper based and electronic consent methods throughout the entire process. At Carillion, we use REDCap for managing e consent. This system is regulatory compliant and suitable for FDA regulated studies. REDCap offers remote and in clinic consent capabilities, multi device accessibility, automatic timestamping. Make sure you document how consent was obtained and the process of obtaining consent in the research record. Now, let's talk about setting this up. The IRB needs to make sure your consent process matches your study's risk level. Sometimes they might say you need face to face consent. It really depends on your study. Just remember, REDCap is your go to for electronic signatures. It's the only approved method we have. And don't worry, the HEART team will help you set everything up. What do you need to submit to the IRB? You'll need your consent documents in a Word format, plus any informational materials like videos or web presentations you're planning to use. Make sure your protocol explains how you're going to use e-consent, how participants will sign, how you'll check they understand everything, and if you're doing this remotely, how you'll verify their identity. Your e-consent form needs some specific features. It's got to have a signature section for research staff getting the consent, easy navigation so people can move forward and backward, and the ability to change answers before submitting. Breaking it into pages helps people understand better, and you'll want to include some questions to check their comprehension. Speaking of remote consent, let's talk about where and how this can happen. You can do it at your study site, let participants do it from home, or offer both options. For remote consenting, you can use either phone or Microsoft Teams. For remote consent processes, proper verification is crucial. There are two main approaches. Established passcode method is number one. This method, the study team and the subject agree on a passcode during initial contact. The passcode becomes part of the subject's record, and the subject enters this passcode when accessing and signing the e consent. Known information verification is number two. The study team uses a combination of demographic data as the passcode. The subject confirms this information when accessing and signing the consent. You must document the verification process and the steps. Proper documentation of the e-consent process is essential. Your research records should include the method used to discuss the study, questions asked by the potential subject, time given for decision making, duration of the conversation, and identity verification process. Let's talk about access and HIPAA compliance. Your participants need to get a copy of their consent form. That's required by HHS regulations. If you're doing this remotely, REDCap can show them how to hit a download button. For in person consent, you can either email them a PDF or give them a signed paper copy. Remember that HIPAA authorizations can be obtained electronically, but you must provide the subject with a copy of the signed HIPAA authorization. For OHRP inspections, they need access to all your records and reports, including site-specific versions of e-consents, materials submitted to the IRBs, all amendments, and all subject-specific signed e-consents. Keep these available either electronically or on paper. When updates are needed, you will need to submit a change update form in Prism with the revised Word document. You will then wait for IRB approval, and only then, after approval, can HART implement changes into REDCap. Investigators must obtain IRB approval for any subsequent modifications to study-related information. Remember, while e-consent offers modern convenience, it must maintain the same rigorous standards as traditional consent processes. Always prioritize subject understanding and proper documentation. Thank you for learning more, and contact our office with any questions.